What exactly is neuroscience? The study of the brain? We've all got this big organ in our head called the brain. It is involved in almost all of what our bodies do. So how do we break this study down? Neuroscientists like to break it down into levels of analysis. You have molecular neuroscience, so this branch might look at molecules in the nervous system that carry messages. You have cellular neuroscience. We can see this odd-looking spiderweb-like cell called the neuron. You have systems neuroscience, which might look at how we look at something and are able to see it. You have behavioral neuroscience. With pharmaceuticals, scientists are able to target pathways that might make you sad or distracted or anxious. And lastly, you have cognitive neuroscience, where you look at how the mind is formed. Obviously, there are lots more branches that branch out from these main levels, and many of these sublevels might work under a few main levels of analysis. But through the combination of all these levels, we're able to study how the brain is able to control our thoughts, actions, and personalities. All of these fields use an array of tools to learn what we know about each subtopic in neuroscience. These are the methods of neuroscience. Some of these methods include dissociation studies between patients with cognitive deficits originating from brain lesions or injury, which suggests what brain regions might be involved in certain systems. Genome studies, where we might compare a healthy individual's genes to an unhealthy individual's genes to learn about what genes are important for certain neuronal functions. We can use brain imaging techniques that will allow us to see both structural images and activities of the brain, knockout mice, other animal experiments, and many other methods. This brings us to educational neuroscience. Ultimately, the goal in this field is to take what we find about the brain and apply that to better education. But how does one do that? For years, there have been debates about whether or not you can go directly from neuroscience to education. A neuroscientist will use neuroscience methods. For example, in a study done with rodents, the animal learned the path it must take through a maze to get to a piece of cheese. While learning the maze by going through it, scientists recorded the firing pattern of its hippocampal cells. So they look at the activity pattern of certain brain regions. The scientists have the animal go to sleep after this, and as the animal sleeps, once again the scientists measure the brain activity. What they find is that there is the same pattern when the animal sleeps, illustrating that this part of the brain studies the new information when sleeping. Does that mean you make students take a nap after a lesson? Not exactly. This is where the idea of bridging this gap with another intermediary field comes in. This field is cognitive psychology. Cognitive psychology is the study of mental processes. Neuroscience can inspire cognitive psychology studies that are more classroom applicable to find an efficient way to integrate the neuroscience knowledge into the classroom. So the information from the rodent study might lead to a different series of experiments that take place in the classroom, trying out certain nap time or mindfulness activities to see if it benefits recall of learned information in the future or if it's even applicable. The idea is that you can't assume that neuroscience can directly be translated into educational improvements. Not every educational neuroscience study will use this exact sequence of bridging the gaps, but there is in some fashion an intermediate between neuroscience and education. Our lab falls into the category of cognitive neuroscience.